info, you can reach them at 909-528-9759. That's 909-528-9759 for Tender Hearts TLC.
KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station, where your business comes first.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali. I am Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, and Dr. Akil Bashir. This week, like every week, we'll be talking about critical legal issues that are affecting our communities. Our topic today is going to be sexual assault, crime, culture, and crisis, the Judge Kavanaugh issue, and the recent Cosby sentencing. Our guest today will be Sharon Lewis Campbell as well as Tanisha Webb. Since the age of 5, Tanisha was groomed through violence and abused to be a caregiver. For decades, she has been the keeper of her family. A teenage mother at the age of 13, Tanisha raised 4 sons and is now the proud mother of 6 beautiful children. She is a 4-time survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. Despite her exposure to trauma, it is her mission to break the cycle of intergenerational violence through education and awareness. An honor student most of her life, Tanisha understood early on the importance of education. Yet life interrupted her dreams and she became a high school dropout. However, Tanisha fought her way out, and she understands firsthand what it is like to grow up and raise children in impoverished circumstances. A mentor to many and an ambassador to others, Tanisha seeks to empower each individual regardless of age, ethnicity, and cultural background to break the silence of depression, abuse, and intergenerational curses. Working with youth and their families has never been a job. It has been her personal and professional passion. Rising from the ashes, once a high school dropout to college graduate, Tanisha Webb knows what it is to fail and succeed. Currently a family partner with Uplift Family Services, Tanisha advocates for healthy lifestyle changes by encouraging others to make a lifelong commitment to healing, wholeness, and balance. It has been a journey, but the award was gifted by God for Tanisha to finally walk in her purpose. Sharon Lewis is an educator and president and co-founder of Empower Edutainment, a nonprofit community-based organization. The Empowerment Edutainment mission is to provide positive messages of hope by creating a sense of self-worth through advocacy, training, and edutainment. That's including dance, song, poems, spoken words, and skits. Ms. Lewis is a social consciousness writer that writes about plays about sex, trafficking, domestic violence, mental illness, and the criminal justice system. Her theatrical presentations, The Elephant in the Room, Silent Tears, and Nowhere to Run, have opened up discussions and have helped spread the word about violence against women and healthcare disparity in America. Ms. Webb is currently the Vice President of the Riverside Branch NAACP and the advisor for the Riverside County NAACP Youth Council. In 2017, she received the State NAACP Advisor of the Year Award. She was also given the prestigious California Teachers Association Lewis Tenson Human Rights Award for her serving as a role model, inspiring and encouraging leadership potential in our youth, and her work towards achieving equal opportunities for all students. She was presented the Mary Hatwood Futrell Award for the National Educators Association for promoting equal educational opportunity for women and girls. Her educational background includes receiving a Bachelor of Arts degrees from University of California, Riverside, and her master's degree from Washington State University. Ms. Webb is a graduate of the Eleanor Jean Greer Leadership Academy. Passionate about working to make a difference in our community, Ms. Webb is presently the parent coordinator and instructor for the University STEM Academy and is the chair of the City of Riverside Commission on Disability. I want to thank both of you for joining us today in our discussions. Thank you. Thank you. I guess I'm going to begin, first of all, just a little bit about each one of you. I guess I want to ask each one of you about currently what you're involved in. I know that, Ms. Webb, you said that you're a family partner with Uplift Family Services?
Yes.
And what is Uplift Family Services?
So Uplift Family Services is the largest, most comprehensive mental health provider in California, a nonprofit, and it services children aged 0 to Tay age, and their families who have mental health challenges as well as behavioral disabilities. We provide therapy, we provide parent circles, family engagement, and different services and linkages to help our families not only cope with the challenges mentally and behaviorally that their children are experiencing, but also to heal from the trauma that they have experienced.
Okay. Is that a program that's here in the Inland Empire, or is that in the LA area?
Actually, Uplift has different regions. Okay. I work in the LA region. We have Sacramento, we have San Bernardino area, and other regions of California. We're based here in California. Okay. And so I am the person that goes out and I work with the parents primarily. I work alongside the therapist as well that works with the children, but I work with the parents to empower them and educate them and to help them become better at, being who they already are. Okay,
all right. And Ms. Lewis, edutainment. Yeah, can you kind of
Yes.
enlighten us on that
Yeah.
term?
Actually, we say edutainment because of the fact that it gives us the opportunity to not just entertain, but entertain with a purpose in mind. For example, we do shows based on the community needs. For example, healthcare is a need. Well, we do shows on healthcare and how you need to see a doctor, maybe, for example, obesity. We do a lot of work in mental health because that is the elephant in the room, and we actually have a play called Elephant in the Room that we go out and do. We try to inform the community through music because that's universal, but also through dramatic presentation so that the community can see themselves through the characters that we portray.
Okay. And so is that also the edutainment, is that something that's here in the local area?
Oh, yes. We do the IE. We are all over. We have performed San Bernardino, Riverside. We have done some things in Los Angeles, but our focus is the IE.
Okay. Well, it's interesting, not too long ago, we actually had a program on the entertainment industry and its impact on the criminal justice system. And I think that it's really, and maybe we'll do that again, and hopefully we might be able to invite you back on that issue, because we know that sometimes, I guess, with younger people and trying to enlighten and younger people, that they're so vulnerable. The entertainment industry tends to be one of the mechanisms in which children are indoctrinated, and it could be for good reasons and bad reasons, and I believe that that's a good way of getting the children's attention when you can bring them a positive message in that way.
We evolve the community. We have all ages. Currently, we have a play going on. Actually, it's going to start. We're rehearsing the play now. It's going to be on October the 12th through October the 14th at the Box Theater in Riverside. And the play came about with our youth and college students concerned about sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. They felt like, well, I'm not safe. Somebody's going to snatch me, or somebody's going to come and approach me, and I don't know that they have ill motives, and I go with them, and next thing I know, I'm on some milk carton. These were some real live concerns that was brought up in our meetings, so I decided to write the play concerning sex trafficking and how it ties into domestic violence. Right. And we have ages as old as 70 and as young as 11 in this production, and it's truly a community effort for us to some of the individuals have experienced, sexual abuse and domestic violence. And so we have cried together, but through crying and through sharing stories, we have a production that we're proud of that involves singing, it involves spoken word, and it involves stories that people can relate to.
Well, a question that I have for both of you is that it's kind of like reading your bio, Ms. Webb, and what you just said, as well as reading your bio as well. I've noticed that when we talked about sexual assault, right before you said sexual assault, there was the mentioning of domestic violence. Now, I'm kind of curious as to how domestic violence and individuals who, are you saying that people who perpetuate domestic violence are likely to be sexually assaulted, or the opposite way? I mean, how do they tie into each other? Are there any kind of relation between the two?
Well, for domestic violence, there's 5 types, and one of them is sexual. So there is automatically the connection right there. It's direct. You're talking about financial, you're talking about verbal, emotional, financial, sexual, physical. And, you know, one is kind of like the segue into the other. So
Absolutely, I concur with that. And what happens in the homes, what you grow up with, you have a tendency to think it's okay, and so the cycle goes on and on. The difference today, people are speaking out, and because they're speaking out about it, it's encouraging others to say, hey, enough is enough, and it's time for me to also speak out and not accept it anymore.
Right. Well, one of the things that, when I was reading some of the statistics earlier when I was getting ready for the show, I know that it says that, and sometimes these numbers are kind of astonishing to me, where it says that 1 in 5 women will be raped at some point in their lives. That's a lot of, that's pretty high. Obviously, we're in comparison to 1 in 71 men will be raped. It says that in the U.S., 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men experience some sort of form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. Says that over 51% of female victims of rape reported being raped by an intimate partner, which is obviously more likely to happen than someone it says 51.1% by a intimate partner and 40.8% by an acquaintance. It also says that 52.8% of male victims report being raped by an acquaintance. And so, I mean, these are really in 8 of 10 cases of rape, the victim knew the perpetrator. So this is very astonishing, and it's obviously something, as you said, that recently these things have been talked about much more than they have been in the past. Now, why is it, I guess the first question is, a significant number of the women obviously aren't reporting the rapes, right? And the question is, why is it that a significant women are reluctant to report being a victim of sexual assault?
Well, it seems to be like the other way around, because you know, when we're talking about reported, you have much more women that report than men. But we were talking about this prior to the start of the interview, how just the silence is because of the shame and the possible blame that comes along with reporting. The re-victimization that you experience, because now that you've spoken up and you've said that this has happened to me, there has to be follow-up questions, which takes you back to have to relive the moment that you were assaulted. And so, you know, when we think about reporting on either end, well, you think about there are more men that are coming out now and reporting. There'll always be more prevalence of women reporting because, you know, when you look at the laws in terms of what's defined as sexual assault or rape as opposed from a woman to a man, we're talking about penetration for a woman, and now we're questioning, you know, is penetration the only justification for a man being sexually assaulted? So, and then how society bashes and ridicules men and automatically associates his rape with him being weak, him being homosexual, all of these different stigmas that come across in that. So it's really the other way around. It's more women reporting, as with domestic violence as well, as there are men. And because how society has set us up to believe the difference in how we attack.
Also, it's still not enough, period,
Right.
either a male or female reporting. And for, I'll talk about from a woman's perspective, often when women report, people, first of all, want to look at their sex record, you know, their activities. Are they a promiscuous woman? You know, have they done something? What were they wearing? How did they walk? What did they say? And it's very discouraging when you have to defend what happened to you,
Right.
you know, rather than having someone sympathize with you. It makes women very fearful to come forward. Often in situations within the community, sometimes the person that they said did the assault is very powerful, and they feel like, you know, say like a person within the community that people see as a good individual. And so a woman said, well, they're not going to believe me. You know.
What's also interesting is the fact that, at least for me, I would imagine, and actually it was something, I was listening to something on the radio, maybe it was a couple of days ago, where someone was talking about the issue with this particular individual was that the person who did it to them, they knew that person. Which obviously, whether it's somebody that you had a relationship with, or whether it could be some other relative, that tends to, and especially in light of the fact that they're saying a significant number of women who are victims of sexual assault is by someone that they know, it tends that maybe that may have an impact on the reluctance to report the matter because of their relationship.
I can definitely speak to that. So I was molested by someone, a family friend that was supposed to have been a godfather at 5 years old. And then he reapproached me around 8 or 9. I told. My mother believed me, and I never saw him again. However, the second time that I was sexually assaulted as a teenager, I didn't tell. And the reason that I didn't tell was out of fear that, number one, I knew the guy that did it to me. I was not with him. I wasn't in a relationship. As a matter of fact, I was visiting the home of my best friend, her boyfriend, and it was his roommate. And so, you know, both of them, I guess, got together and said, hey, you know, you go ahead and take her into the room, and I'm going to leave you with her. And ultimately resulted in me being raped that night. And so my boyfriend at the time, which was the father of my children, him and the guy knew each other from the hood. Both of them were gangbangers. So in my mind, and I ended up getting dropped off at home by the same guy that raped me because that was the only way I was going to get home. And then to find my kid's father and my boyfriend hiding in the bushes and thinking that, oh, you just got dropped off by this dude. That's who you was with all night. That's why you haven't been at home. And then to get upstairs and him to beat the mess out of me like I was a dude. And so I took all of that, the beatings, being called names, the assumption that I was out there hoeing. I took that and carried that for at least a year. Because in my mind, I thought, number one, he's not going to believe me. Number two, the assumption is that I somehow asked for this. And number three, once he gets upset, he's going to go approach this dude, they're going to fight, and somebody's going to get killed, and that blood's going to be on my hands. And then after a year of finally sharing with him what happened, I was blamed anyway. So, you know, it was a different situation when I was younger because I knew that my mother would believe me. I knew I had that support at home. That was my natural support. But as a teenager, by that time, my mother was deceased. My stepfather had killed her. And I was in a teenage relationship with someone that was 6 years older than me and that had already groomed me for domestic violence and was already abusive. And so at that standpoint in my life, I felt like I had no support, and so I had to keep silent. And I regret it after a whole year of holding that in, telling him in the first place.
And that's why you have so many people coming forward now, because when you were growing up, it wasn't called, oh, that's a domestic violence or that's a sexual attack, you know.
Right.
These were just things that was going on. And you didn't have your parents telling you about these things. So watch out for this, watch out for that.
Right.
My situation was different because my father was a musician. And he wanted everything. He didn't have a son, so he told me about men would run a train on you. He would just break everything down. So I was watching, when I went places, I was watching behavior of men. And sometimes women, young ladies, I should say, our bodies mature early. So at 13, we have a body of a grown woman. But our mind still is of a 13-year-old. And I remember specifically hanging out, just like you, hanging out with my girl and going to her house, and this big muscle brother of hers, eyeing me real tough. And I remember what my daddy said. So I went home and told my mother that, hey, tell, I won't say her name, you know, tell her that I can't come over your house unless your mother's there. See, I had that street smart only because my daddy broke things down, and that's what my mother did, and it made me safe. But it was a lot of young ladies my age, and even today, it's still going on, that they don't have anyone breaking these things down, and they get subjected to what Tanisha just said. And what occurs from that is that they have a lot of pain, a lot of pain. They're 30 years old in relationships and they're hurting, and the men don't understand why they don't want to be having sex with them all the time and what they go through when they do have sex. It's a lot of pain that is going on today.
Right.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
So I was 8 and 9-year-old that was fully developed. I had breasts and hips and behind. And so growing up not having a healthy sense of a father or a male role model. Now, I'm going to set aside the fact that my uncle, my mother's brother, always took me under his wing, but we're talking about a little bit later after the onset of the initial trauma. So here I am, 8 or 9 years old. I'm walking around in the neighborhood and I'm being sexualized by the guys in the neighborhood. Domestic violence is going on in the home. I've already been molested at 5. I've already been touched. So now I'm growing up with the sense and the idea that in order to have love, that I'm going to have to gain the attention of a guy. So even though I walked around and as a teenager I showed cleavage and I may have had on tight things, I wasn't a young lady that intentionally was promiscuous. It was a matter of me searching for love, but because I was associating sex with love, I was associating the attention from males as attention and protection. Because those are things that were not provided to me by the men in my life, my father, my uncles at the time. No one validated me. And so I was searching for that validation, that protection. All the things that I needed from my father, I searched from males, not men, not knowing the difference. And I'm a firm believer in we attract that of which we are. So being a broken young lady, I attracted a lot of broken young males. I was also groomed for violence. I was groomed for these things. So, when we talk about not only the early development of a young lady physically and where her mind is mentally, and don't get me wrong, there were many parts of me that was older because I was the oldest of 4 children and I was groomed to be a caregiver. So my mind and my conversation was a lot more mature than someone my age. But there were a lot of things about human development and being a child that I didn't get a chance to experience that I didn't know. A lot of stuff that I knew way before my time. And so that's another reason why I was able to attract older guys, because, mind you, I was 11 years old getting into a relationship with someone that was 17 years old, and ended up having 3 children with this guy. And he got arrested, and he went to court, and he got prosecuted for statutory rape, but that charge didn't stick. My point is that when we talk about, our girls and their sense of an ideation of what a young lady is supposed to be and how she's supposed to behave, what she's seeking and searching for, what she should pay attention to, red flags and different things, like this young lady that had her father groom her, and she knew to say to her mother certain things that would keep her safe. For others, whether we intentionally dress like that or we didn't, a lot of times we're searching for something false. And that was me.
Right. What's interesting, I mean, in the discussion, and most of the discussions that we hear, what I'm hearing is obviously, and it's interesting that you said that there was a time where the things that we, it was there, and we really didn't identify things as sexual assault early on. One of the things that I remember when I was a kid, or growing up back, especially like in the 70s and 80s, Doc, one of the things that was a big thing, and what came to me is the Cosby situation. And I remember that there was, and someone mentioned it, but I'd actually almost forgot it. People used to always talk about this thing called Spanish fly. You remember that? And boys used to say, they go to parties and they're giving girls Spanish fly and they're getting girls intoxicated. And it didn't seem, the culture and the socialization of taking advantage of someone when they're under the influence wasn't like you're doing anything wrong. It's almost like they were consenting to it. Do you recall that, Doc?
Yes, I do.
And as boys and young men, our development and the way that we're taught to deal with our women, in our communities, tends to be skewed. And so the dialogue is always about the women.
Yeah.
And the way that the women should be raised by the men. But you never hear it about the way that we socialize and raise our young men. Right? Do you agree with that, Doc?
Well, so when you're talking about the degree